All right, welcome everybody. My name is James Burnham. It is Wednesday. It is noon. This is the Minnesota Outdoor Skills and Stewardship Series webinar for today. It is March 23rd. I don't know about y'all, but in the last week, I've seen migrating cranes coming overhead. I've had robins singing in the backyard. I've seen some very angry geese standing on ice, tapping their feet, just waiting for things to go. So spring is coming. Uh, but it's that fall spring, right? It's that first fall spring in Minnesota, and a couple of people got suckered by the 60-degree temps the other day, and then it snows today. It keeps us on our toes up here. That's why we love it. Um, my name is James Burnham. I am here with Aaron, and Aaron, I never asked you how to pronounce your last name. Is it like GIF or JIF? Is it Gerlovich or Gerlovich?
It's Gerlovich.
Gerlovich. Well, see, I got the wrong stress
All right.
and emphasis on the wrong syllables. Gerlovich. Aaron is a director with the Minnesota Steelheaders, a local nonprofit, and we're thrilled to have him here. Aaron, are you going to start the slideshow?
Yep. I will pop it up right now. I'll begin
Fantastic.
to share my screen.
Awesome.
And one moment. Okay.
There we go.
All right. We are good to go. All right. Welcome, everyone. James, are you seeing everything fine?
Yeah, let's maximize that. Yeah, there we go. There it is.
There we go. Let's see if I can. There we go. I don't know if that in the corner. Okay. All right, everyone. Welcome. As James said, my name is Aaron Gerlovich. I will move through the first opening slide here. We're doing spring steelhead fishing. Okay, here we go. All right. First of all, James and I are on here, and today's topic, again, steelhead fishing the North Shore. And this is primarily going to be based in the spring season. We do have options for steelheading in the fall as well, but our main push of fish come in the spring. So that's what we're going to be focusing on today. That's what today's tips, tactics, and information will be about. All right. And here are some upcoming skills and more talks. Feel free to take a look at this, take photos, take notes.
Yeah, so you know what we're doing for folks who are tuning in for the first time. This is a weekly series where we're offering the opportunity to folks to learn about new information around a variety of topics. It's primarily centered on hunting and fishing activities, but we cover everything from paddling the Mississippi. A couple of weeks ago, we did pollinator planting and prairie management. We've done snow sports and cross-country skiing. So if it's outside, at some point, we're probably going to talk about it, but kind of our wheelhouse is that hunting fishing realm. It's always Wednesdays at noon. And our goal is for you, the audience, to learn about the hunting, fishing, and recreation opportunities you have here in Minnesota. Give us an opportunity to share how we, as the DNR, manage the wildlands and wildlife, and provide tips on stewardship for all of our shared natural resources. This is our spring lineup here on the right side of the slide. So basically, from now until the end of May, we've got a variety of some great topics coming up. Next week, it's rough fish fishing. And then we're going to be talking about managing your property to attract sharp-tailed grouse. Our BOW program, our fantastic BOW program, is going to be talked about on as we get into April, and as we move down, you can see all the things that are coming. And it's spring, it's Minnesota. We can't get by without talking about walleye at some point. So we got that towards the end of the month or middle of May, right before the walleye opener. So please take a note of that. Tune in. If you're interested, you can get to it on our website, and I'll make sure that I put that in the chat. Just a little housekeeping information. The chat function on the right side of your screen, that's where we're going to be posting links and information that you can click on and find on your own. Please direct all of your questions to the Q&A, and that should be under the chat. If you can't see your Q&A, click on those three little buttons in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen, and that should pop up the Q&A. It's just really easier for us to navigate the Q&A than it is the chat, and we can mark questions that have been answered so that we can make sure that we get to the questions that you might have. Now, with all of that being said, I'm going to turn it over to Aaron, and he's going to walk us through steelhead fishing. I am super stoked about this talk. I was telling Aaron on Monday, when I came to Minnesota, there were two things that they were on my bucket list of what to do as a recently immigrated Minnesotan or arrived, whatever. One was dark elk spearing. I've got that, check. And the other is spring steelhead fishing. So I'm still working on that one. And so this is a chance. I've got questions. I know I'm going to be asking Aaron some stuff, but please chime in with your questions for steelhead fishing. And I'm going to quit talking and turn it over. So Aaron, take it away and lay some knowledge on us.
Great. Thanks, James. All right, moving on. Okay, first of all, who I am. I'm Aaron Gerlovich, as mentioned. I'm the director, or a director, I should say, of Minnesota Steelheader. We're a local Duluth-based and Twin Cities, St. Paul-based organization. Some of our members are up in the Arrowhead region here, and some of them are down White Bear Lake, St. Paul. We have a few directors kind of spread out. So what we do is our main goal and purpose is to educate new or experienced anglers about steelhead fishing on the North Shore. If you look online and you try to go on and research steelhead fishing, a lot of the stuff you're going to find is West Coast or East Coast style steelhead, and which is fine, but they don't exactly pertain to the North Shore. So Minnesota Steelheader started as a very niche organization to educate anglers about North Shore tributaries exclusively. So the information that you're going to get today and the information that you're going to get from minnesotasteelheader.com or from any of our directors is going to be only regarding the North Shore. So very specialized, but you will get the right information that you need to go fishing from Duluth to Grand Marais. I grew up in the Duluth area, just a few miles west of Duluth. I teach fly fishing at the North House Folk School, and I've been chasing these fish for 17 years approximately. So these fish have been a large part of my life and kind of have shaped the way I grew up. All right, so why target or chase spring steelhead? You'll hear a lot of people refer to their weekend plans as, I'm going chasing steelhead, because they're elusive. You know, they're, as the slide says, they're a large, powerful rainbow. They are just exactly what that says. They're a rainbow trout, a lake run rainbow trout. But they're most numerous during the spring season. And the spring season is April into maybe the first part of June, but primarily April and May. And what they do is they come in the spring to spawn, and that's when they're in the highest numbers. That's when we can target them. They're one of the most challenging species in Minnesota to catch. I liken these fish to muskie fishing. You know, I've chased muskies and I fish muskies, and there's some days where these steelhead can be just as tricky and just as heartbreaking. As I put in quotations there, in parentheses, you'll see that one fish per 30 hours. And what that was is a takeaway from a news article done years ago that said they interviewed anglers and they came to a consensus that one fish was hooked for every 10 hours of angling. And for 1 out of those 3 fish that you get are going to be landed. So it comes down to 1 fish per 30 hours. And you may think of that as kind of a low number or a lot of hours per fish, but when talking to a lot of new anglers that come up on the North Shore to fish and try steelheading for their first time, it normally takes them a whole weekend to catch that one fish, to tie into a fish, and you may not even land it. The water's high in the spring, these fish are strong, and they can kick your butt. So that number, although it may seem kind of daunting, is not too far off. But we're here to cut that learning curve for you guys and reduce those numbers. So steelhead fishing is also a really nice way just to get back outside. We've all been kind of cooped up. If you're in Minnesota, it's been a long winter. I know every winter seems long to me because I'm ready to get back out chasing fish in the open water, but people are developing cabin fever, and you can only ice fish so much. So as spring comes, we're itching to get out, and it's nice to be able to get your tackle organized again and stretch your legs, get out hiking, check stream conditions to see if they're open yet. And like the slide says, cabin fever, it's a great way to break it. So I push people to steelhead fish, and you know what, even if you don't catch a fish, it's really beautiful out. And I'll tell you what, you're going to see the most extraordinary things on the North Shore when you're wearing waders. You can get places that other anglers or other tourists per se can't access. So you get to see the behind the curtains, so to speak, of the North Shore's tributaries. So it's a great way to get out. All right, so let's talk a little bit about steelhead, their biology and their behavior. Now, this is going to be a short rundown. I could talk for hours about these fish. We have exactly 1 hour to talk, so we're going to kind of condense it. They've been in our lake for, Lake Superior, I mean, for 110 years. That's kind of the first time they've stocked them, and they're not natural, but they're considered what's called naturalized. So they've been here for 110 years. Our first initial stocking, brood stock and stocks came from West Coast steelhead. So they're all from, Oregon and Olympic Peninsula, things like that. So these fish have roots to the original ocean run fish. So we brought them over, we stocked them as a new sport fish to try out. They took off pretty well. In some rivers they have spawning populations, some they don't, but we still subsidize their stocking in different tributaries for harvest. But they've been here, they've been surviving in a what I consider a kind of a desolate lake. Lake Superior is not very habitable for new species. It supports our lake trout, our brook trout, our Siskowet lake trout, and Cisco's, herring, things like that. But there's not a lot of food base. So for a new species to do this well, it's really remarkable, and it says something about how strong steelhead are and just their will to survive. So moving down, a steelhead spends most of its adult life in the lake. They live as a lake fish, as a roaming lake fish, where they eat bait fish and insects. They're, anything like that they can forage on. Every spring, they return to the tributary to spawn. They return at roughly 4 years old, and this is what's considered an adult fish. A 4-year-old fish is anywhere from, say, 21 to 25 inches long, and they come in to the rivers to spawn every year. When they spawn, the eggs will kind of settle down into the gravel, and then they'll overwinter. They'll hatch. They'll stay in the river for about 1 to 3 years. When they reach a size of maturity, anywhere from, say, 8 inches to 10 inches, around that mark, they'll push back out, and they'll live in the lake for the rest of their adult lives. Steelhead are not like salmon. So I get a lot of folks that ask me, when do these fish die? They don't. They will spawn several times through their adult lives. Some of these fish have been recorded to be 13, 14 years old. These are reports of tagging fish through the fisheries department and the DNR. So these fish can spawn multiple times through their lives and create multiple sets of offspring. So you'll see on the right here, there's a photo of in the yellow circle, you'll see a photo of a steelhead tucked in the brush, making his or her way up. And that's what you'll see when you see these fish pushing up in the spring. When you have a low water event, you can sometimes see them making their way up, and sometimes on gravel, actually digging redds, or what we refer to as their nest. But these fish, it's kind of cool to see. These fish are not the fish that we target. We're going to let these fish that we can see, we let them be as a rule of thumb, and pursue fish that are going to be not actively spawning. So it is neat to see them, though, as they make their way up, and you can see they do a really good job of camouflaging themselves into the natural environment. So moving on through the slide here, we have the 40-degree initiation temperature. And what that looks like, or what that is to us, is as the ice breaks free in the spring, we have a few fish that push in, and they're going to push in regardless. Their biological clock is telling them they got to go, they got to spawn, and this may be 33 to 36 degree water temp. And this is cold, cold water. Typically, you're going to see ice chunk floating down the river at this time, and you're going to see slushy banks, and you're going to see a lot of snow still on the banks and maybe on the river. Moving on through spring, a week, 2 weeks later, when we have a lot of our thaw and a lot of the snow has kind of melted away, our temps will start to come up. And we see the 40-degree mark as the initiation temperature. And what that means is that's their temperature that they sense when they're in the lake that says, okay, it's good to spawn now. The ice is clean. The rivers are good to go. Flows have dropped down. Then they push. And this is the temperature that the majority of our steelhead will push in at. And when you see creel reports and you see catch reports, you see a very close correlation to catch numbers when anglers are interviewed. The numbers of their catch go up when stream temps reach this 40-degree mark. That's when fish really make their move. And as a ballpark, I put April 15th in there. Now, it could be earlier, it could be later. As we all know in Minnesota, we can't predict the spring. I mean, I've had some springs where a lot of the fish are going to push in the end of March. And I've had some springs where April 15th is still, I think a couple of years ago, we still had ice on the river. So April 15th is it's a benchmark I've used in the past to kind of tell people, this should be the time where a lot of our fish come in. Down to 50 degrees.
And Aaron, that's the water temperature, right? Not like air temperature. So you're talking about the temperature of the water.
Oh, yes, that's correct. Yeah, water temperature, I should say. Yes. Thank you for bringing that up. Okay, 50 degrees. Water temperature is what I refer to as the prime temperature, okay? Now, 50 degrees is when the fish have been in the system for a bit. Maybe some are still pushing in, but that water warms up to the point where that kicks on their metabolism. So the fish some go into spawn mode, some go into peak migration where they're expending a lot of energy. You'll see them at this time is when you're going to get the photos in the Duluth News Tribune of fish jumping the waterfalls. That's when they have the most energy. And that's when you're going to see, in my mind, you're going to see the most activity. So 50 degrees is when I like to push for as my favorite time to fish. And coincidentally, it marks with May 1st. So typically end of April to the first week of May is when you're going to see those nice warm water temps. After that 50-degree mark is met, we typically don't have any more snow on the bank. We're moving on to warmer springs and temps go up drastically from there. But that mark is a very, very good time to fish. I tell people if you're gonna try steelheading and you want to go out in the best week, wait all spring. Get your stuff ready. You don't have to go out there and suffer. You may catch a few fish, but if you just wait until the end of April, maybe the first week of May, that's when you're fishing and you're going to see the most results, the most bang for your buck, because those fish are active. They're going to bite. They're moving. So 50 degrees, it's great to see. All right, moving on. James, did you have any thing you want to touch on for this slide?
No, we've got a quick question coming up in the Q&A. Is there a place online that you can find out the water temps?
There sure is. So at the end of this presentation, I'm going to list a link to minnesotasteelheader.com. And what they offer is they offer water temperatures, they offer water flow reports, and they offer historic catch ratings. So what you can do is you can look in the past, say last year, pick a week in May, and you can watch the catches go up, 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 up as the water reaches a certain degree. And you can overlay that with current temperatures. So you can kind of predict when you want to go and when it's going to be the best. But yeah, all of those metrics are offered on MinnesotaSteelheader.com, and they're just a link to USGS survey. So in a lot of our tributaries, we have a water height gauge and a water temp gauge. So it's just a link to those, but yeah, we do offer them all.
Nice. And I already put the Steelheader homepage in the chat. I'm going to put a link to the waters page on Minnesota Steelheader in the chat as well, so that people can go straight there.
So, and if you look on the homepage of Minnesota Steelheader, you'll see you're going to scroll down in the middle of the page. You're going to see river flows, and what you'll see on there is the Sucker River. I think the baptism, the knife, the sucker, the baptism, and the arrowhead brule are all offered on there, and that gives you flow conditions to pretty much the entire North Shore because they are spread out, right? So at a quick glance, those flow and temperature ratings are all on there to click. So
nice.
Yeah. Okay, we're gonna move through. Okay, rules and regs for steelhead fishing. So this is where things get a little bit not convoluted, but they are different than normal trout fishing in Minnesota. So fishing license and trout stamp. That's a necessity. There is no season opener. Okay, so unlike the Wisconsin rule where the opener is this weekend, we don't have an opener. It's just when the ice clears, and it's when the fish are there. So we don't need the opener because we don't need to protect these fish. Okay, so before the ice clears, there's no way to access these fish. Okay, and in the fall, these fish really aren't pushing in, so these fish can't be targeted during low fall water when they're trying to push in because they're not in their numbers. So we don't need a season opener because we don't need a regulation to protect these fish, if that makes sense. They're just not accessible for us. So no season opener, fish when the ice breaks free in the spring. Below posted boundaries requires one single hook, no treble hooks. All foul hook fish must be tossed back. I do have a sign for a slide for the posted boundaries, but so that's where regulations differ. As you can see, one single hook, no trebles. You cannot use a dropper. Okay, so a dropper fly would be one fly connected to another in a say 8-inch spacing, which is legal in Wisconsin on the Arrowhead Brule or Wisconsin Boise Brule, but not in Minnesota. Okay, so above boundaries where there's no steelhead or inland regulations apply, that's fine. But no droppers below posted boundaries, and we'll go into this what that boundary sign or what that means. But angling hours: 1 hour before sunrise, hour after sunset. Typically, you know what, I'm not fishing in those hours because it's so hard to see my line, and I'm fishing when I can see, say 7 o'clock. Some folks will get on the river a lot earlier to reserve their spot, but there's no need to fish in the dark and make bad casts that are going to land on top of fish and ruin your spot before you even get effective drifts in. So, but you can. The bag limits, if you choose to keep fish, we do have fish put in for retention purposes for you guys to take fish and harvest fish. They must be 16 inches minimum, 3 fish per day, and they must have the adipose clipped. On the right slide, on the right side, you'll see pictures of those 2 fish tails. On the top, you see what's like a little nub, and that is a clipped adipose, signifying a fish that can legally be harvested. On the bottom, you'll see the adipose, that big tag fin that sticks out. That signifies a fish that must be immediately released. You must take a photo of that fish or do whatever you want, but it cannot be harvested. That's a wild fish, has not been stocked, must go back. Any questions on that slide before we move along?
No, that looks good, Aaron. We did have a quick question back to the tributaries. Does the water temperature vary substantially from tributary to tributary?
It does. It does, because if you look at snowfall on the North Shore, so looking at Duluth, if you compare Duluth snowfall to Grand Marais snowfall, Grand Marais up on the Gunflint Trail can get substantially more snow, and sometimes vice versa, but it does, because the more snow, the more runoff, and the runoff will keep the rivers cooler. Okay, so you have to imagine it like this: as if we get a 70-degree day with lots of snow still on the ground, the water is going to get colder before it gets warmer, right? Because it's going to melt that snow and it's going to run off into the river. So what you'll see, you'll get a nice bright sunny day, but stream temps will plummet. So not only do they vary shore wide, but they vary from day to day a lot. So yeah, that's a good question. But typically what you'll see is people starting in the Duluth area, because stream temps they will warm up faster. And they end their season in the Grand Marais or even north regions, because that's where the majority of the runoff is still happening, and they still have fish pushing in that are fresh. So
that's awesome. It almost sounds like you're chasing snow geese, right? You're trying to hit that ice line right as water's opening up. You're just kind of chasing that open water as it migrates north.
Yeah, you're exactly right. I mean, you're chasing the bite. So not only is no weekend is the same. If you're fishing the same weekend on the same tributaries, you're missing something really good.
Nice.
So that's why it pays to hop around and pays to move. But yeah, good question on the water temps. They do vary. So
nice. So a couple of questions about wild versus stocked fish. What is the ratio of stock to wild? Is this a fishery that's mostly stocked? Is it mostly wild? Like, do you happen to know that offhand?
The ratio of wild to stocked, I don't know the exact number. I can tell you that we're stocking around 120,000 clipped adipose fish per year. Those are 4-inch fish. The exact number, I can't tell you how many wild fish are still in the lake. That would account for not only our system, but Ontario, Wisconsin, Michigan. So a lot of different agencies at play. But we do, I would say down by Duluth, I would say a fifth of the fish you're going to catch are going to be stocked. And if you go up to Grand Marais, I would say a tenth. So more stocking is done down by Duluth.
Nice. And then can you speak as to why is it important to make that distinction? Why can't we keep wild fish?
Well, so what happened with these fish is there was a steelhead boom essentially in the 70s. Fish, it was awesome. The run was great, and people, they wanted to harvest these fish. They harvested them, and they took 5 a day. Some folks, how human nature can be, they went back and they took 5 more and 5 more, and they over harvested these fish, and sooner or later, or before they knew it, there was no fish coming back. So they had to put an emergency order in, and they just they enacted a no-kill rule. They started supplementing these with stocked fish. We're not allowing people to keep wild fish because we've worked 110 years to establish this population, and not only us, but as I mentioned, different agencies. It's a group effort, and we're all working together to have a healthy steelhead population. So we're doing our part. Wisconsin is allowing 1 fish to be kept that's over 26 inches. So if you think about it, we're a bit more liberalized on the fish retention policies. We can keep 3 over 16 inches. So allowing those wild fish to go, it maintains those fish in the system, so anglers can catch them, they can release them, have fun, enjoy it. But we still have some fish for anglers that want to go out and put food on the table, as a lot of people do. They are good to eat. So that's kind of why we don't do the keeping wild fish. We want to keep those wild stocks for people to enjoy.
Nice. And then just real quick, because I know we got a lot more information to get through, where the stocked fish hatched?
So we do a lot of our hatching, and so I guess to strip them, we take their eggs and their milt, we take them in the French River facility, okay? We send those eggs, actually just send them via truck to Spire Valley, and that's kind of over by Raynard, if you know where that is, but Spire Valley Hatchery. They then hatch these fish for us, and they grow up to about 4-inch size. And then we stock them in the lower shore, primarily like the Lester River and tributaries like that. We stock them in the lower shore because they're, it's a nice watershed that's going to have plenty of room for these fish to grow, but also it's close proximity to Duluth. So if anglers want to come up and harvest fish, they don't have to drive 3 more hours up the North Shore to catch those harvestable fish. So
nice. And we just got a correction from Nick. Nick, I really appreciate you making that. The Steelheader now produced at the Crystal Springs hatchery.
Oh, thanks, Nick.
So straight from the fishery manager's mouth. There you go.
I love it.
That's one of the great things about these webinars is we get to have that real time interaction and get up to the second information. So thank you very much, Nick. Aaron, let's move on. Man, this is some great stuff. Let's keep going.
All right. Okay, river signage, like I said, we wanted to put this on the fishing access corridors. If you fish some of the rivers on the North Shore, maybe like the Sucker River, you will see this sign right off the highway of the expressway. And what this is an easement notification, more or less. So it just tells you that the landowner has allowed an easement, and they're letting you come in on their property. A lot of the North Shore can be private property, and these landowners are very gracious. They let us access these tributaries, but we need to respect them. These signs, the sign on the left tells you that you are indeed on their property, but we need to make sure we pick up litter, stay close to the river as possible. We don't need to be going farther inland, because what happens is we end up, destroying some of their, whether it be landscaping or natural setting that they have on their property. So yeah, that's the fishing access corridor. And the upstream special trout season, what that is, it just indicates the separation point between the lake, the superior tributary regulations, and inland trout regulations. And I say inland trout as inland river fishing. So above this upstream special trout season boundary, you will have like your normal, spinner set or spinner rigs and things like that you want to throw, or 2 hooks or dropper flies. But below this special trout season boundary, it applies to the Lake Superior tributary regulations. So the 1 single hook, the no trebles. Normally, this sign will coincide with the first impassable boundary. And what I mean by that is the first large waterfall on a tributary. That's not always the case, though. So, when in doubt, just make sure if you're steelhead fishing, just abide by the 1 single hook rule. It only takes 1 hook to catch a fish anyway. So that being said, we'll move along. These are kind of regulations you'll see, and you'll see this sign marked pretty clearly. Both of these signs, you cannot miss them on the North Shore. They do have some brush growing around them, but the DNR tries to take pretty good care of signage to make sure they're visible. Okay, moving on. All right, so the techniques that we do for steelhead fishing are drift, fly, and float. The drift fishing is essentially a fly rod with a mono on the fly reel, bounces bottom. It gets down in white water, gets down very quickly, and it's one of the original methods kind of pioneered for Great Lakes fishing. Mono, it's called mono chucking or bouncing bottom or chuck and duck. It's all the same presentation, and you can get down in very turbulent water with that skinny monofilament and access those fish that may be inaccessible for a bobber or float or a fly. So just a quick note on this picture on this slide. The special boundary sign on this river is actually on the left-hand side of the gentleman in the blue. It's cut out of the photo, but the sign is right there, and you can see that it kind of correlates with this large waterfall. This is a boundary on one of our North Shore tributaries, and that's kind of where you would typically see the sign. So moving on, fly fishing is normally indicator style fishing, and what that means is just a foam plastic indicator that's going to suspend your fly or presentation in the water column to get in front of the fish. It prevents the fly or nymph or whatever lure you're using or fly you're using very naturally, very delicately, and easy to cast and very nice to visually pick up on takes because the fly rig is so subtle. You will see any small take. Fly fishing is taking off. It's getting huge. A lot of people are moving towards it because they've seen it, and it's in outdoor magazines. I think it was in GQ magazine, Gentleman's Quarterly, which is like, it's to give you an idea of how much it's taken off and gaining popularity. I would say fly fishing is, when I first started fishing, it was mostly drift, and now fly fishing is easily, 60% of what a lot of anglers are doing now. It's taken off, and it's a lot of fun. Float fishing. This is kind of the same as fly, however, we're using monofilament, a large float or bobber, and a lot of times people are using natural baits, whether it be like waxworms, spawn bags, but they will use artificials, rubber baits. These fish are just trout, so any trout style small lure works great for these fish. And what it is, it's suspended under a bobber, and kind of just like a fly, it floats down the river right into their strike zone. The float is really good in cold water. Having the ability to use live bait or baits with scent in cold water will a lot of times get those fish to move and kind of be a little bit more active than they normally would on a straight artificial or fly. So these fish can be picky in the early mornings when the water temp drops. So a lot of times the guys with the float setups do well. And you can see here, it shines on the long, flat runs where it is the same depth for, say, 30, 20 yards of a river. You can cast up, and that bobber will float at the same depth and same strike zone through the whole run. And you can cover a lot of water very effectively with the float. It does not, however, shine in the presentation below, where you see fast, turbulent conditions and quick runs. That method like that is the chuck and duck or the drift that gets down in there nicely. So, any questions on that before we move along? We will talk more about these techniques, but I just want to introduce the three main.
No, I think that's great, and I know we got more ground to cover, and it's 12:40, so we gotta keep moving.
Yeah. Wow. All right. Let's move burn through. Okay. So drift and fly. Drift, very simple. Main running line, 10 to 12 pound. I use high vis so I can pick up my drift, and I can also see people's fish going through the water. I can see that line and trace it to easily net their fish. Also, the high vis, it'll kind of alert you if you're going to get wrapped up in a snag or something like that, but it is nice to handle in low light conditions as well. So 10, 20 pound higher poundage for your main running line. It's going to get nicked up. It's going to take a lot of abuse, so you want that heavier running line. And it also is nicer to handle with cold fingers. Moving down, I have a swivel and a dropper. You'll see that dropper tag with my weight. If that sinker gets hung up on something, which it normally will on the North Shore, there's a lot of rocks, I can pop that sinker off versus losing all of my rig. So that sinker is just pinched on very delicately, something that we can sacrifice rather than losing all of our line and leaving a big rat's nest in the river or another angler to get caught up in. The leader on this is anywhere from 18 to 36 inches, depending on what kind of water you're fishing, how deep you're fishing, how fast. 6 to 12 pound mono or fluorocarbon, whatever you choose. Going down that, we have a fly or lure. That's just a yarn fly with a high vis hook I tied on there for an example. On the right, we have same thing essentially, but this is a fly setup and no three-way swivel. This is all inline. So on the top, we see 2 fly line. and that is our leader. The orange or red part is our leader, 9 foot essentially. That's what most are pre-made in the store. Our indicator is tied halfway in there, or however deep we want to fish. Split shot, and then our tippet leader. Our tippet is the last section of our leader, and that's normally again 6 to 12 pound leader with 12 to 36 inches of added tippet depending on our depth.
Now,
So
Aaron, when we're talking about this rig and these setups, you know, that split shot, I've really tried to push to transition away from lead split shot with all of my stuff. I mean, are you using tungsten? Are you using other stuff?
yeah, we'll transition to tungsten or tin. You know, at a lot of fly shops that are in the local area, that's pretty much all non-toxic stuff. It's you know, you're going to lose a lot of split shot, and you know, I'm not going to tell anyone, you know, what they should fish with. That's their personal preference, but yeah, I mean, you're going to lose a lot of tackle, so be mindful of what that effect is going to cause. I mean, that's a lot of lead in the water, losing 20 split shot a day, and that can happen. So you know, tin is a good option. Tungsten is a good option. You know, these are things that we kind of have to be responsible with, and know that we're going to be losing stuff. So plan to lose tackle, and you know, it's your choice. But yeah, those are good options, James.
Awesome.
All right, moving along, and sorry if I'm rushing through this. We're kind of compressed, so worth first. Okay, so presenting these both rigs, okay, whether it be a float or all rigs, float, drift, or fly. Do you see the red box there where it says where I'm going to cast? I'm going to cast a good, you know, say 20 feet above where the fish are. And the idea is to let that presentation settle down and tumble along bottom where a natural presentation would. These fish are always orientated right towards bottom normally, and that is behind rocks. It's behind any current break that they can kind of hold in and prevent themselves from expending a lot of energy. So in this run like this, you're going to present high, let it drift, and I'm presenting with the idea that the fish are in the yellow box. I want my fly down. I want it drifting naturally by the time it hits. I don't want to splash it over the top of the fish, because what you'll do is you'll spook those fish. They'll either push up or they'll push down, and they'll get out of their comfortable run that they were in. They're probably not going to bite once you spook them. So does that make sense? And kind of presenting above the fish to let it drift down?
Yeah, absolutely. So you're kind of standing, if you're facing perpendicular to the flow of the water, you know, you've kind of got the fish at the 2 o'clock mark, and you're casting at about the 10 o'clock mark, and waiting for it to drift down to them. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, you're right. Correct.
Awesome.
So, all right, moving on. Again, float, fly, drift. On the float technique, you can see I just have a spinning rod, and that's just an 8'6" to 10-foot spinning rod, medium light, medium power, 10-pound main line. And the 10-pound main line on that is just so I can store more on the spool. On the fly, 10-foot 7-weight with floating line, normally a weight forward floating line to manipulate it. And then on the drift, it's a 9-foot 8-weight. And then you have a 20-pound main line on that. So you're sensing there's a trend on all these rods, and they are normally like 8 foot or longer, right? What that does is it helps you cradle that lighter line. Sometimes we're dropping down our leader to 4-pound or 6-pound leader in fast water. Now, what that long rod will do is on every head shake and run, that rod flexes. And instead of using your drag, which might be seized up in the cold or kind of sluggish, that rod flexes and takes the brunt of the abuse of those strong fish. Because it can be, when you hook that fish, it can be violent. So you want that long rod to absorb all that energy and power. That's why the long rod comes into play. It also helps in manipulating your drift. You can keep the rod high in the air to keep line off the water, which will reduce drag and give you a more efficient and natural presentation. So, okay, so those are your 3 rods, 3 presentations. Any questions on those?
No, I think let's keep rolling.
Okay. All right, basic baits and flies. Now, you'll see on the top, these are beads. So beads are really popular. They're a really nice steelhead egg imitation. On your top left, you'll see a 6mm bead. That is the actual size of a normal natural steelhead egg. Okay, they're normally like a light orange, not amber, but yeah, light orange color. Not the chartreuse. I picked the chartreuse so it would stand out, but the chartreuse does work. All the colors up there are effective. 6mm, 8mm, 10mm, and 12. Those are all pretty popular, bead sizes. And I have a next slide about beads as well that we'll talk more about. On the fly selection we have, right beneath the beads, you're going to see the first row of insects there are stonefly imitations. And those are pretty popular in the North Shore. We have some large stones. Those are great to use. Right underneath, you're going to see some more nymph imitations, and then caddis. Caddis are very popular on the North Shore when the water warms up. We do get those green caddis on the shore, and they will start crawling around. The steelhead take advantage of those when they are dropping back or leaving the system after they spawn. If you want to throw streamers, longer flies, you can do that. You can dead drift them, or you can strip them across pools. And we have the sculpin, which is a bait fish that's found in our North Shore tributaries, egg-sucking leech, and just a typical white bait fish pattern with a pink bead on it to get some attention. Nymph sizes 10 to 6. You can use some pretty chunky nymphs on the North Shore just to get their attention. But stoneflies, caddis, some mayfly stuff, nymphs, not dries. But these are kind of your bread and butter bugs. There's a lot more that you can use. Some people have, there's patterns that fill books up with effective patterns. These are just some of the patterns I pulled from my box that do work. Quickly, before we move on, I want to show you on my piece of paper here, I have a rig that we use on the North Shore. Because we can only use one hook, we have done what's called a bead and a bug. So you can see on this, if you look at my camera, everyone see that?
Yep.
Okay. You see the bead? The bead is pegged above this stonefly imitation. It's about 1 3/4 inches away, 2 inches away from our stonefly. Now, that is only one hook, so it's still legally, it's still good to fish. So that lets us get away with using 2 presentations like they do on the Wisconsin Brule. So the bead and the bug is a great imitation or a great presentation to throw if you're covering water, searching water. You want to find out what they're biting on. I would throw that. So moving on, you're going to see a lot of beads. A lot of beads because eggs are really prevalent in the system during the spawn. Okay, so top you'll see some 6mm in the top, the small ones. You'll see a pretty common interest of pinks and oranges, right? Those are kind of your bread and butter. Some folks do use blues and purples. I do have some chartreuse in here that I like, but pinks and oranges are what you're going to see a lot of. Some pale yellows work as well. 6mm is the natural size of an egg. If you have low clear water and the fish are there, you can see them rolling. You can see them splashing on the top, but they're not biting anything you throw. Try a really natural 6mm egg. That with a small, size 8 hook, that may be what you need.
Nice.
8mm to 10mm, more turbulent water. As the water is faster and higher in the spring, it may have some sediment in it. We want to account for that, so we use a larger egg, and we may use brighter colors. On bottom right, you can see that I have, that there's 2 X's on the bottom right, the chartreuse and what's called a UV clown. Those are 2 of my, good early season patterns. Higher water, and those are both 8mm.
Nice. So, Aaron, are they actually biting the bead, or are they just kind of honing in on that and then they're hitting the fly?
So what I'll do on this is I will just run the bead alone. The bead alone, and I'll tie a normal size 8 hook on underneath it. That's it. Okay. And you'll put that under an indicator or just dead drift it naturally on your mono setup. But they are crushing that bead um, pretty aggressively on occasion. You know,
Nice.
they want to get rid of those beads or those eggs for a couple different reasons. But they will eat them at the end of the season. They want to crush them to eliminate competition for the other fish in the system, so their offspring have the river system to grow in instead of competition. But yeah, they are actually just crushing that bead because it looks like an egg.
Nice.
So 8 to 10 for more turbulent, 12 millimeter and higher for high dirty water. And you can see on on some of these I have like the top right, I think that's some 12s, the big pink one next to it, and those ones are going to be for some high dirty water when you need to get their attention.
And that would
Uh,
qualify for like really tannin dark water as well.
yeah, I mean, the thing about the North Shore is a lot of it is tannin. Like speaking on the baptism, just per se, that's root beer water 100%. So just because it's tannin doesn't mean it's dirty. I speak
Mhm.
on more terms of if you look at the gooseberry in the spring, it looks like chocolate milk, right? That's dirty. That's high, a lot of sediment, a lot of spring runoff. The tannin actually doesn't play a lot of part in it. You can use still pretty small presentations and natural stuff in there because it's clear water. It's just tea stained if you've ever
Nice.
seen it. So yeah,
Nice. Yeah, we got a lot of questions. I know we still got a few slides to get through, so we're gonna kind of hammer these next slides, and we're gonna try to get through everything before we hit one. So let's we're gonna
yeah.
keep moving.
And I'm happy to stick around here for questions as well. So
Nice. Thank you.
all right, so let's figure out where to go. On the North Shore, we have what's called the Steelhead Highway, Highway 61. Okay, that's going to be from Duluth to you can see up past Grand Marais. When we get up past Grand Marais, we get to Grand Portage. There are some trips up there that are on the reservation that you need permits to fish. So we'll discuss Grand Marais to Duluth. Um, Over 26 different trips for you to fish, right? So the cool thing about the North Shore, I hear a lot of people say, I don't want to go fish the North Shore because it's too crowded. It's crowded if you want it to be, right? If you want to go stand shoulder to shoulder, you can, but you don't have to. Don't feel like you have to. Look how much shoreline there is, and there's so much opportunity for you to just keep driving, find some new water. And if you put the time in, if you want to be alone, you can. You can be the only person on that stretch of river. So just because there's people there doesn't mean you have to fish with them. And there's fish in every one of them. If it connects to the lake at one point, it's going to take fish, even a small drainage trickle. It doesn't mean that they're going to spawn in that tributary. They may push in and push out. However, they will be there at one time, right? So you can put some time in, find new water. You just got to get lucky. You got to put some time in to find those fish. But yeah, and the North Shore, when I hear people say shoulder to shoulder, it's not. It really, if you've ever been, say, to Alaska and fished the Russian River, that's shoulder to shoulder. The North Shore is really pretty enjoyable and pleasant to fish. So people are polite. People will respect your their distance, and it's a nice place to fish. Trying to find access on these rivers, most of it is full public access. Okay, state parks, road parking, hiking trail access points, they're all good spots to come in at. There are some private rivers, and they are marked very, very prominently. No trespassing all over. Okay. With those rivers, you could go ask for permission, but they don't want people in there. There's some that I can list maybe 3 rivers on the top of my head that they just don't want people in there disturbing their property. So there's a lot of rivers to find that are public access. I implore you to just go somewhere else and find some water that is open to fish.
Now, Aaron, on that point, on posted land, the water may be posted, but on non-posted water, it's okay to walk in the water on private land. Is that correct?
No, not actually. So what you have to consider on a tributary is if it's considered navigable. And the DNR has a regulation that if you can float a canoe down it at its lowest point, it's considered navigable. And if it's navigable, then yes, that would apply. But a lot of our tributaries, the landowner actually owns the stream bed. Okay, so you have to keep this in mind, that even though your boots are wet and people say that, oh, I never trespassed, I was up to my knees in water, it doesn't matter. The Sucker River, for example, the landowner had a lot of littering, and he's a great guy, but he had to shut down his access to his river, or his chunk of river there, and he legally could. So if it is no trespassing, chances are they're going to mark it before you even see the river. Okay.
Excellent. Thank you for that clarification.
Yeah. Yep. And if you have more questions on that, on a no trespassing or an easement question, please don't take what I say. I implore you to reach out to your local CO, ask him for more clarification. I don't want to be the guy that gets you a ticket. But moving back to my point I made earlier, there's so much water to fish that you don't have to worry about trying to cross someone's private land. So, okay. So when breaking down a river, I tell people to start at the bottom, start where it dumps in the lake, right? Work your way up. So pick a Saturday, Sunday, pick a river, work from the lake up. A lot of our rivers are what's called short run rivers. So that means that the boundary, or the last impassable waterfall, is within a mile of the lake. Okay, so that really isn't a lot of water for a person to cover on a weekend, right? So start low, work your way up to the boundary. Sooner or later, you're gonna find those fish, right? You're gonna bump into them, and you're gonna learn that river system. So rather than leapfrog around and maybe missing that pod of fish, there's going to be a nice active pod somewhere in that river. Work low, work high at the end of the day. When you're done, finish up high. And then the next day, if you don't find fish there, go to a different system, pick a different river. But a person can cover a river in 2 days, no problem, on the North Shore. There are some larger rivers that you cannot, like Devil's Track is a little bit more of a intensive one, and the Arrowhead Brule, that one you can't really walk. But yeah, you can usually start low and go high.
So building off of that, I just put in a couple of links. There's the Recreation Compass. There's our new Trout Finder. Those are both in the chat. Those are great tools with special information on posted limits and regulations, especially on our Trout Finder page. Aaron, are there any considerations for aquatic invasive species when you're jumping from river to river? Like, are you cleaning your boots, or like what kind of considerations are you taking with that?
Yeah. So over the last couple of years, we've had some biologists find, and it's kind of a native species to some of our North Shore trips, but Didymo, which is rock snot. And you want to be mindful. A lot of folks aren't really using felt bottom soles anymore, and I'll discuss that after. But be mindful of cleaning your equipment. If you are, say, fishing the North Shore, then you're going, to the driftless after, or the North Shore, then you're going out west after. We do have the rock snot, which grows in some of our tributaries naturally, and it's not really a big deal here yet. We've seen it. They're documenting it. They're keeping an eye on it. But that's something that you can certainly reach out to. Nick might have a little bit more insight on that. Nick Peterson with the DNR, and a good question to ask him. But I tell people just to be mindful of that. Dry boots at the end of the day are good to have. If you're not going to dry them overnight, then wash them completely. Drying, what drying will do is drying will mitigate the transfer of aquatic invasives or things like that. So we don't have a lot to worry about on the North Shore, but the Didymo is present, so something to be mindful of.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, and the last thing on this one is just respect the private property, respect the easements. So these people that own the land by the rivers, they want us to fish them. They love seeing us catch fish, and the last thing they want to do is shut down their land. So I tell people, if leave it cleaner than you came in, pick up trash. It doesn't take much to pick up a pop bottle on your way out, and there are cleanup projects that you can take along with us through Minnesota Steelheader. We do an adopt a river every spring, and we clean one up. So if you want to help clean up, all it does is put out good vibes and good juju for the landowners. So
nice.
Moving on.
Aaron, just really quick, it's 101. I know some folks we've still got over 120 people on the webinar. We're going to try to get through this as quickly as we can. If you have to drop off, thank you for taking that. No, not you. The people watching. If you're watching and you have to drop off, thank you so much. This is being recorded. It will be posted on the Minnesota Outdoor Skills and Stewardship webpage in about a week. So if you miss any information or you want to come back and check it out, it'll be available. And we're just going to try to plow through this as quickly as we can. I appreciate everybody's patience. There's been a lot of questions. We've been dealing with a lot of stuff. So thank you so much, and thank you so much for the interest. So let's keep rolling, Aaron.
All right, let's do it. Okay, types of water. You're going to encounter all these kind of main types, these three types on the North Shore. They're the riffle sections, and you can see above this angler, if we look upriver, you're going to see those rocks and boulders that break up the river, and they make up what's called pocket water and riffle sections. In front of him, there's some white water, that kind of fizzles out to a run at the end. But this riffle section that he's fishing underneath the cedar trees there is a great section to fish. When these fish are making their push up, we're at 50 degrees in that prime temperature when they're really pushing and migrating, expending energy. This turbulent section can be great to fish. They will kind of stack up there for a moment before they hop that little waterfall barrier that he is fishing in front of them. And moving on, the run. So nice long laminar flow. The flow stays the same. It's the same, typically the same depth underneath. If there's no riffle and if there's no water turbulence, that tells us that there's nothing underneath that is disturbing the water. So there's no logs or structure underneath to cause a surface disturbance. It tells us that it's pretty normal flow. Yeah, and hey, Corey, that's her. So this angler was fishing that nice long flow, that nice long run right in front of us. Thanks for tuning in, Corey. All right, these are good spots. These can also be typical spawning locations because underneath these nice long runs can be gravel. So if it's not rocky and it's kind of sandy or gravelly, these can be areas that fish will actually dig their reds, and you'll see fish flashing and turning sideways in this typical condition. So a great spot to fish, but you will, later in the spring, you may see fish on their spawning as well. All right. And pools. This is a large plunge pool in one of our state parks we have up here. Deep holes in sections of rivers, and they're a great spot for fish to escape from predation, whether it be birds or high sunlight, fishing pressure, or fish that are seeking more stable water temperatures. So fish will dive down to the bottom of that pool to kind of hang low, reserve little energy, and they won't be pushed around and kicked around. When you get down to the bottom of that, the flows are not say stagnant, but they aren't as fast as the top of that river. So they can hunker down, reserve energy. You can see the reason why we were fishing that is my anglers here have they have stocking caps on, they're bundled up pretty good. It's cold. So that's why we were fishing there, because we had a cold night, and the fish were all hunkered down in the deep, dark water there. Also a great spot to fish if it's very high sunny. These fish will get down to deep water, so they can't be seen by predators, and they can't be seen by us. So, all right. Okay, so hooking and landing fish. This is an important part of the process. You know, you put a lot of time into finding these fish, finding your spot. When you finally do get a hit, you want to capitalize on that bite. So when indicator fishing or float fishing, I tell people you set on a pop, drop, or stop. Okay, so that means when your indicator pops a little bit, you see it making vibrations on the surface, you're either hitting bottom or a fish has grabbed it and is kind of mouthing your fly. If that fly or the indicator drops down in the water column, it goes under. Also a good cue to set the hook. And if it stops dead in the water but doesn't go under, it's stopped for a reason. So again, it's either a snag or a fish has grabbed it and just hanging on to it. Set the hook on all of these. Hook sets are free. Take as many as you'd like. So when that hook set is done, when you set the hook, you want to hold for tension. 3 seconds. I tell people count to 3. Within that 3 seconds, you're either going to have a head shake start to develop and it'll start to pull back, or it's going to be a solid weight and you're going to know, hey, I'm hung up on bottom, no problem, I'll go get that snag out. But hold for 3, 1, 2, 3, and then if you feel that fish, you can begin the fight. If not, you can pull that snag out. You're going to snag up a lot, so you're going to think that every time that indicator goes down, you're going to think it's a rock. And what'll happen is you'll set the hook, you'll drop the rod, you'll give the fish slack, it'll come up, shake your fly, and off it goes. So always assume it's a fish, always hold for that 3. When you're drifting with no indicator, set the hook when the line stops or if you feel a little bit of weight. I liken it to almost walleye fishing. When you're just feeling that rod, all of a sudden the rod gets heavy or you feel a little bit of a tick maybe, set the hook. So drag is always set light on all of the rigs I use. You can add more tension after by palming or just turning your drag up, but set your drag light because the first initial pulls of a steelhead are going to be they can be violent. So they're going to pull, and if that drag is set too tight and you're not ready, you will snap these fish off very, very quickly. And the last 2 things are the down and dirty rod angles and the down and dirty fighting style. So no high sticking. I don't want to see the rod straight in the air like you're fighting a walleye from the boat. I want to see that rod right next to the water. I want to see low rod angles to pull that fish out of the fast water. That fish gets pulled up higher in the water column. That fish hits the water and it will get pushed higher. The higher flow volume is on the top of the river or the top of the water. Low flow is on the bottom. So the higher you bring that fish, the more of a fight you're going to have. Get that rod down, get it low, and pull that fish towards you instead of pulling it up higher in the water column. Low rod angles.
Aaron, is there a guideline? You know, how long should you be fighting these fish? You know, we don't want to cause unnecessary exhaustion or damage to the fish. Is there a guideline? If it's just taking forever, do you ever just cut a line and let it go?
You know what? Two things are going to happen. The fish is either, if you're fighting it for too long, you have your drag set too light and the fish is going to take you downriver and spool you. Or if you're fighting it too hard, the fish is going to snap you off. So you tackle up, and by tackle up, I mean use the appropriate line size for the scenario you're fishing. I always tackle heavy. If I'm fishing spring flows where it's a little bit of sediment in the water and it's cloudy, I go with a heavier 10-pound or 12-pound leader. But that being said, you tackle down for your scenario. But fight them as quickly as you can. The down and dirty style is a quick way of kind of whooping them in, breaking their will before they can take you downriver. But chances are, if you're making a mistake in the fighting process, that fish is going to chastise you for it, and you're going to know. It's going to take all your line, or it's going to break you off really quickly. Okay.
Nice.
And those are things that you just have to learn how to fight these fish by losing some fish. You will lose some fish. That's part of the process. So the more you fight, the more you learn. The give and take game. All right, now moving on here. Let's see, handling fish for photo and release. Okay, so this is a nice important step. When you do finally land that fish, you want to take care that the fish, if you're releasing it, it gets the proper treatment, the proper care to be released so the next angler can appreciate it. So first of all, get a large net. I can always tell an angler is new to steelhead fishing on the North Shore because they come to the North Shore with a trout net that is 8 inches long, right? So I can tell, all right, these guys they're not equipped for big game. You know, you gotta have a big hoop, almost like a large walleye boat net or a big trout net that's meant for the boat. So you want to have a big enough net these fish can sit in comfortably and rest in the water while you are getting your camera out, or you are, you know, getting your phone out, take a photo, or anything else that you want to document this fish with, whether it be a tape measure or anything like that. So the rule of thumb, keep the fish submerged in the net, comfortably in that cradle until you're ready for the photo. Take the photos over water. So you can see in my slide here on my photo, if that fish were to flop, and they do, they're strong fish, that fish would flop into the water, it would swim off free, as opposed to us taking that up on the beach, and that fish would get beat up, rolling in the rocks, rolling in the gravel. So we want to reduce any harm to that fish once we do land it. So photos over the water are really nice to have. And then the last point on this one is keep hands free of the gills. That's how, you know, they're really sensitive at this point. You fought them to the point where they're beat, they're exhausted. So protecting their gills that's how they breathe. So we have to take very good care to not disrupt anything in that respiration cycle of things. So hands out of the gills, cradle or belly. And I tell people, don't squeeze, just cradle, keep them comfortable, and they won't flop around and panic on you. All right. We're burning through, James. I want to make sure we cover these. Sorry.
That's all right.
Okay. What to wear? So breathable waders are going to be your best friend on the shore, no matter how cold it is. Some people do wear the neoprene style. That is fine, but they are not going to be as comfortable when you have to hike. We do a lot of hiking on the North Shore, and the breathable style will be your best option. A good wading jacket, no matter if it's raining or not. I wear this jacket over my waders. If I do take a spill, this will actually keep water from blowing in my waders right away. It will keep you a little bit drier. So base layers, synthetics or wool, fleece, things like that. Shy away from cotton. And then no matter what temperature it is, I normally go with pretty lofty wool socks, just because of the fact that you're going to be standing in cool water for the majority of your day. It can be warm, you know, above your knees, but you want to have your feet comfortable. You need good dexterity in your feet to navigate these rivers. They're slippery, big rocks, high flow. So you want to make sure that you are comfortable on your feet. And then fingerless gloves. I always wear like fingerless wool gloves or synthetic gloves, so you can tie knots and keep comfortable. Okay. This is one of the most crucial parts of steelhead fishing on the North Shore of my attire. Studs. You can see all the carbide cleats in the bottom of my boots. Extremely important. I talked about mentioning felt earlier, and felt is great in warm conditions, but on the North Shore, if you get your felt wet and it's a cold spring morning and you step out onto an ice bank and that felt starts to freeze, you're now wearing hockey skates and you will go down. You will injure yourself. So felt is great, warm conditions, but I push people away from it to go from a rubber soled with carbide or aluminum cleats. So definitely traction is a must on the North Shore. It will keep you from having a really bad day. I've seen people wipe out. I've seen people get hurt, break themselves or equipment, and there's nothing worse than starting out your day with a broken rod. So invest in good traction, please. Okay. All right. Other equipment needed. A decent packer bag to carry all your goodies. I carry an extra jacket in there. I carry my lunch, a minor first aid kit, and things like that. Forceps for taking a hook out. I do carry pliers for popping out hooks. A wading staff, which is just a collapsible walking stick that will keep you on your feet a little bit better in faster water. A large portable net. You can see the size of my net. It's, it dwarfs my backpack. My backpack can fit in that hoop. So it gives you an idea of how big that hoop actually is on there. Oversized is great to have. Polarized glasses and scissors for trimming flies if you need, and then a thermometer. Thermometer, that's going to tell you what the river temp is. It's going to tell you what kind of condition to fish. Okay? He went kind of quick, but all right. I think is that the last slide? So yes. Okay. So yeah, James, I like that. Yes, James, you do. All right. So resources to utilize. Minnesota Steelheader, as I mentioned earlier, ton of great information on there. I invite you to please go on there, check it out. Weather.com. I know I put this in there, it's arbitrary, but if you go on to weather.com, you're going to be able to predict the future. When the forecast calls for a 35-degree weekend, and it's been, say 20 degrees out, you're waiting for that warm up, it looks like 35, you're not going to get that warm up, and you're not going to get a big push of fish. So that can tell you, maybe I don't want to drive 100 miles north this weekend. Maybe I'll wait until, Tuesday, where it looks like on Monday we had a 65-degree day. I bet you on Tuesday those fish are going to be pushed in. Now we're going to have, some fish in the system. So use the weather channel and use Minnesota Steelheader to kind of overlay air temps, water temps, and stream conditions, stream flows, and you'll start to develop a kind of a playbook per se of what conditions do and how they affect each other, and how they do to affect the bite and how many fish you're going to catch. Nick Peterson, I put in here. He's on the presentation right now, but he's our migratory fish specialist, MDNR. I'm sorry, not MDN. My apologies, Nick. The guy is an awesome resource to have. We work closely with him. He's toils away night and day on our projects and makes sure that we have a fantastic fishery. So reach out to him. I put his email in there if you have any questions, and then my email is listed on the bottom. Please reach out to me with any questions you have. I'll sit down one night. I'll plug away, and I'm happy to answer anything. I know we rushed through the last portion of this, but we could talk for days on steelhead. So, all right, James, that's all I got for you, man.
Hey, that was a lot. It was great. We've still got, we're 18 minutes over. We still have over 90 people on the call, on the webinar. So, I think folks are interested in this stuff. We've had some great questions. We've had over 20 some odd questions in the Q&A alone. So we've been trying, we've had a small team toiling away, trying to keep track of what we got. But I just want to make sure that folks know, I put in the Minnesota Steelheader homepage one more time, our webinar landing page one more time. I just put in a link that Benji had put in the Q&A for if you have inherited lead tackle. The Pollution Control Agency of the state of Minnesota has a recycling program. So you can turn that in and get it recycling to get that lead out of your tackle box. So with that in mind, we do have some questions, and I want to make sure that we can answer some of them. Some of them are technical, some of them aren't. I did see a comment in the section about, do you need a mustache like Aaron's to go fishing?
Don't have to, but it helps.
It does. I find the same thing with hunting. Like when I grow a mustache for deer season, it usually confuses the animals. They're not sure what they're looking at, and it gives me a better opportunity to jump on them. So here's one. Do steelhead stage in the lake before moving into the rivers? Are they catchable when they're staging in the lake?
They are, yeah, they are catchable. They do stage. That's a good question. Around end of February, to March is when you're going to start to see those fish move in closer. Typically, steelhead will stage or will live further offshore, but they will move shallower, and people will do they will shore cast for these fish, whether it be throwing spoons or flies under bobbers. There's a lot of different techniques, and there's some info on Minnesota Steelheader about that as well. But they are catchable, and people do fish for these fish all winter long, actually. Some days it's miserable out there, but prime time for them, I would say, if you wanted to start targeting these fish, staging right when you see not the rivers blow out of ice, but when you see mud start dumping into the lake, that is your cue that says, okay, those fish are going to be sensing that that sediment, and they're piling up. They're hanging out in front. Get out there and start casting because they're there. You're going to see them start rolling and porpoising early morning. So yeah, good question.
Is there a difference in the flavor of the fish between spring and fall fishing? Do you notice that?
Yeah, there is. So in the fall, when we catch these fish, whether it be trolling in the lake, we'll be out. We don't keep any fish, or I don't per se keep any fish that I catch in the fall steelhead fishing. I'm out hiking and I don't want to keep anything. But trolling in the fall, October, November, we catch flipped steelhead that are dime bright, bright silver, and they are nice orange meat, very good to eat. When we do catch fish in the river systems, some people will keep them, and they're colored up on the outside. They have the rainbow appearance, maybe the dark greens, and I have seen their meat. It's not very good. It's paler. It would be very akin to a colored up Chinook salmon. I know James goes out for kings in Michigan, and when those kings get really dark, the meat just not very good. So you can keep them. Some people will eat them. They're okay. They're not great.
Nice. Do the stocked fish return to the stream where they were released?
Yes and no. Some they will return in a sense, but some will do what's called drifting. And I know Nick can attest to this as well. He's kind of taught me that some fish will actually intentionally drift to not put all their eggs in one basket per se. So what this means is if these fish push, we'll say the Sucker River, and then they'll push out and they'll push maybe the Knife River, that kind of close to your geographically. If the Sucker River has a catastrophic flooding event and all those young get washed out, or the eggs get washed out, something happens, whether it be high water, low water, whatever, they still have that backup genetics in the Knife River, right? So they will hone in on the same area and the same river, but they will drift as well. So yeah.
Nice. Quick gear question, technical one. Can you use braid with a fluoro leader with a float?
You sure can. Yep. Braid with a fluoro leader. It's great later in the season. What you will have is early season, when you have cold mornings, you will have ice on your guides and you will have ice in your braid. You can treat your braid with some silicone products and things like that. However, that braid will freeze up and it will eventually kind of degrade when it gets ice covered on it. It will, instead of floating nice high on the water, it'll sink. It'll cause more issues than you want. The other thing about braid is if you're going to use it, you have to add a very, very long fluoro leader, because as I mentioned earlier about these head shakes on these fish, it can be violent. And if we're hooking these fish in close quarters, you're taking all of that energy, and those head shakes they're being distributed on that small, say, using a 4-foot fluoro leader. All of that energy is being put on that leader because, as we know, braid has no stretch. So that's why we run mono. It floats a little bit nicer on a float. It doesn't give you that nice hook setting power like braid does, but some folks run braid, majority run mono or fluoro. So yeah.
Nice. You kind of mentioned this a little bit in the talk. Do you have any other recommendations for live bait in addition to the egg sacs? I mean, you said that they're trout; they're going to eat whatever trout eat. So, any other tips?
Yeah. Typically, like I said, wax worms work really good. There's like butter worms you can get from bait shops. They're just a big wax worm. Some folks use mealworms. you know, you can kind of get my drift on the aquatic insect thing. Spawn bags, you know, they are great to use, but yeah, I mean, they're just trout, and I dance around this subject. I dance around the night crawler thing, because yeah, they're trout, and they will eat night crawlers. You know, they work great. As we know, fish love night crawlers. However, we're fishing for a lot of these fish are catch and release fish, okay? And when you catch a fish on a night crawler, typically that fish has gutted that night crawler. By the time that you can see that, I don't care how good a fisherman you are, by the time you see that bite or feel that bite, that fish has swallowed that hook. And what you see is fish coming up, pouring blood out of the gills, or you know, it causes a lot of mortality on a fish that must be released. So I don't like advocating for night crawlers. They're legal. You can use them. Use whatever you like. However, you got to be respectful to our fish. So
Yeah, and it's one of those things where it may be legal, but it may not necessarily be ethical or be the best practice for the resource.
that's correct.
Um, so when you're talking about the bead and the bug, how are you attaching the bead? Are you just feeding the line through and pegging it with a rubber stopper or some other mechanism?
Yeah. So there's three ways that you can do that. The one is my preferred method is threading it through and pegging it with a provided peg. It's a silicone peg. You get 2 uses out of each peg, and that will kind of secure the bead in line. It's nice because it doesn't cause any abrasion to the line. So it's very nice. You can slide it, you can adjust it, but it still holds in place when presenting. The other method is a toothpick. You can shove that in there. It doesn't hold as nice as the silicone peg, but it does its job. And the last method is what's called bead knot. You can look those up.
Aaron, you're breaking up on us, buddy. Your
They
video
will
just cut out.
hold the bead in place with just a
Oh no, the techno gremlins finally got us.
let's see.
Aaron, we lost that last little method. We did the silicone stopper, we did the toothpick, and then have you got the third one really quick? Or did we lose you, Aaron? Uh-oh. Uh-oh. I think that's a sign. It's 128. Aaron, are you there? No. Well, we've gotten through almost all of the questions. There was one last question from Rick. Aaron's here. Okay. So we did get to the first two methods for pegging that bead. Have you got the third one for us? Oh, he's still not hearing you, buddy.
Hey, hello.
Yep, you're there's your picture. There's your picture.
All right. Can you? Okay. So a bead knot. Did you hear me on that?
No. So what's the bead knot?
Okay. So a bead knot is just a simple line loop that you can look up online, but it does secure the bead without any pegging, and that's good. It's tough on light tippet though. It can cinch down a little tight. So if you're using light line, I recommend a peg.
Nice. And how between the hook and the peg, or between the hook and the bead, how long is that distance?
Less than 2 inches.
Okay, so pretty dang close. And
Yeah.
then
Yep.
the very last question we got is a question from Rachel about that pool picture that you had with the waterfall and the folks all bundled up. She's wondering where the picture was taken, and that may be you giving away spots, and that's totally up to you, but that I'm just the messenger. I'm just conveying the question, so you can choose to answer that or not.
She stuck it out. So thanks for staying on the presentation, and because you did, that is the Cascade River.
Excellent.
So
Excellent.
I don't mind sharing spots. Some are private, but because she stuck it out, hey, you gotta have a little reward. Thank you for sticking out.
Fantastic. It's 1:30. I've been
Yes.
thrilled at there's still over 50 people on. Thank you for sticking it out. Thanks for Aaron. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your passion. Thank you for working with the Minnesota DNR to help with this resource. Thank you to Minnesota Steelheader. They're a fantastic organization. They're really, they help out not only with education and awareness and advocacy, but they're also helping Minnesota DNR with the science of this resource. So it's just a tremendous organization, one that I've been very impressed with, and it's just a great thing to see out there happening. So thank you. I really appreciate it, Aaron, and everybody at Minnesota Steelheader. Um, we're going to wrap up. Thank you to everybody who stuck it out. Like we said, this is going to be posted online in about a week. And please get outside, enjoy the warmer days, and we'll see you out there. So, Aaron, thanks so much, and we're going to wrap it up.
Thanks, everyone. I appreciate it, and thanks for sticking out and spending the afternoon.
Awesome. All right, bye, everybody.
All right, see you, everyone.